So without further ado, I think we'll turn it over to you because time is short.
Adam, everyone, shalom. It's actually Erev Tov. I'm in New York, so Erev Tov, and I'm delighted to be with you. This is a very auspicious moment for me. Today was the launching of my new book, Ally, My Journey Across the American-Israeli Divide, published by Random House. And it's a book that has made some waves here already, because the book tells not only my personal story, what it was growing up as in an American Jewish home that was not particularly extraordinarily observant or even so Zionist, but how I came to love Israel at an early age and dedicate my life to Israel and serving in its armed forces and its governments, of course, as ambassador between 2009 and the end of 2013, which is the bulk of the book. And the book is coming out now. It was supposed to come out in September, October, which anybody knows the book world is when you bring out books if you want to sell a lot of them, but I thought it absolutely imperative that the book comes out now before the possible signing of any nuclear agreement with Iran, that we would set the record straight and provide readers in general, but particularly American Jewish readers, with the accurate story as I saw it from my perspective in Washington of our Israel's relationship with the United States, with the Obama administration. Certainly, there's been a tremendous amount of disinformation, a tremendous amount of blaming, and the big question as we approach the Iran agreement is trust and credibility. We've been asked to put our trust in a certain administration, and I set out to explore the question whether that trust can be justified and what Israel should do. The book also makes a very strong case for the need to preserve bipartisan support for Israel, and at the end of the book, there's a bit of a prescription that tells you what I believe we have to do moving forward in order to preserve an alliance, which is vital not only for the United States and Israel, it is crucial for what remains of Middle East stability, and I believe it's beneficial for the entire world. And it's all there. It's there in Ally, and I hope you enjoy it. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about some of the policy issues that are going on, the Gaza report, the peace process, such as it is, the French initiative pending in the Security Council, and, of course, the Iranian issue. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'll start with a question for myself first. What do you see as the concrete steps that it would take for Israel to be able to convince the present U.S. administration to veto the French UN proposal? And would you be in favor of those steps?
I would. And I've set out what I believe is those steps in an op-ed article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal about now 3 months ago. It's called The Two-State Situation. I stated right up front that as a matter of diplomacy, we should continue to adhere to the Bar-Ilan formula as announced by Prime Minister Netanyahu in May of 2009. But at the same time, we have to realize that there's no one to negotiate on the other side of the table. Even if there were someone to negotiate, it's questionable whether that Palestinian state, which lacks national institutions, which lacks an economy, or an elected, uncorrupted government, would survive very long, certainly if there be any Israeli military pullout. So we have to work with the reality that we have, strengthen what I call this two-state situation. About 90% of the Palestinians live in areas where they never encounter a single Israeli soldier. We should strengthen that reality. We should invest in the West Bank economy. And I think we have to limit where we build. This is the most difficult pill for us to swallow. If we would go back to the 2004 understanding between then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and George Bush, President Bush, the Bush-Sharon letter, it laid out those areas which everybody understood, including the Palestinians, would always be part of the Jewish state. Those are the major Jewish neighborhoods of Jerusalem and the major settlement blocks. If we would limit our building to there, I think we could preempt a very difficult maneuver by the French or perhaps by New Zealand in the Security Council, and assure that the United States would not abstain on such a resolution.
What about the 10-month settlement freeze, though? Do you believe, and actually I forget, although I think it occurred during your tenure as ambassador.
It did indeed.
Do you think that we achieved, we meaning Israel, do you think that we or Israel achieved anything for that 10-month freeze? And do you think there's a feeling that why do it again because Israel didn't get the credit that it thought it deserved?
Well, there's a long discussion of the freeze in the book, for and against. I myself was at the freeze. At first, I didn't like creating a precedent where we had to pay for the Palestinians to sit at the table with us. And certainly, as Hillary Clinton said, that the freeze was unprecedented, and she meant it. We did not get credit for it. That is true. And we did create a situation where the Palestinians felt that they had to be paid in order to sit at the table. The only benefit to the freeze was that we proved to our own people that we had gone the extra mile. And for those of us like you who remember that we took this unprecedented step in order to get the Palestinians back to the table, and it didn't bring the Palestinians back to the table, we were able to convince ourselves that we went more than the extra mile, and that if the situation broke down, even though much of the world was going to blame us, we could be assured that we did our utmost.
Well, one last question about the freeze, and then we'll move on to another topic. Do you think that Netanyahu could get a freeze now with the current coalition? Do you think he could get that through?
That I don't know. And keep in mind, I'm not talking about a total freeze. Back in 2010, the freeze went from November of 2009 till September of 2010. That was a total freeze. It did not include Jerusalem, and it did not include about 2,500 units that had already been started. But it applied to the entire area of Judea and Samaria. When I talk about about freezing, and I don't even use the word freeze. I talk about restricting building to those areas of the major settlement blocks. That would have been voided under the terms of the freeze of 2009-2010. Could the Prime Minister achieve this in the current political constellation? I'm not sure. I believe that my party, insofar as I'm the person who was the point man on diplomacy, we would support it. That was our position during the negotiations. But I'll tell you outright that the Jewish Home Party, would oppose it. As would a good number of the members of the Likud.
Speaking of your party, did you expect attacks on your book to come not only from the Obama administration, but from people like Moshe Kahlon, Abe Foxman, and Gilad Erdan?
Well,
and what was your
Moshe out of this? Moshe did not attack the book. What was done there was that people took the letter that he sent out and distorted what was in it. There's no apology in there. He simply stated a fact. The book was written before I went into politics, and it's true. The book was written before I went into politics. I knew about it. So let's leave Moshe out of it. I think what has occurred since the book came out is an enormous amount of attacks on me personally, on my legitimacy, on my credibility. I've been called a liar. I've been called a money-grubbing politician. Okay? I've had various accusations hurled at me that I engage in cultural stereotypes, very severe accusations. What is missing from this entire onslaught of criticism is anything of substance about the book. Nobody to date is willing to take on this book in substance. And I think that in itself is very significant, and that needs to be pointed out again and again. They're trying to delegitimize the book. They're trying to delegitimize me, but they can't delegitimize the narrative because it's true.
One of our members, Helen Friedman from New York City, has asked whether you were aware at the outset that you would take some career and personal risk by writing a book that recounted your experience and reflections during this recent and volatile time period. And do you think that this will affect your future? And I'll leave your future in an open question.
Let's leave my future in open questions because I don't know if anybody knows about their future. It's a philosophical question than or not. I think that Israelis in general like to see people sticking up and defending for them. But having said that, I knew, and I went into this with very open eyes, that this book would be controversial, that it was unconventional for an ambassador. Most ambassadors are career ambassadors. They go from one position to another. I was a political appointee, with perspective as an historian. And I came into my role with very good, I would say, liberal credentials. And no one can, I think, accuse me of being one-sided or one-dimensional, and did a tremendous amount of reach out to different communities. So that I think that lends my perspective a lot of credibility, in fact. But I knew that I was going to encounter a tremendous amount of resistance from all sorts of quarters. My hope was, and very much remains, that this book can start a conversation, that it is coming out now on the eve of the possible signing of an Iranian agreement, which will be very, very bad for the state of Israel. And this here we have no political differences almost at all among the Israeli parties. All my life, what can I say without sounding overly sentimental or self-aggrandizing? I have spent my life fighting for this country, and I'm not done yet.
Danny Amrani from New Jersey asked whether the U.S. will demand Israel or will ask for Israeli support of its agreement with Iran in exchange for a veto against the French proposal at the UN.
I have not heard that, and I would be almost certain that would not be acceptable to anybody in the state of Israel. It's apples and oranges. It's apples and oranges. The Palestine issue is a very complex and potentially dangerous issue. It could lead to delegitimization and sanctions for us, greater isolation for Israel. It could. We'll fight back. The Iranian threat is a threat to our national existence. It's a threat to the lives of millions of Israelis. And it's not just one threat, it's several threats. Not just that the Iranians will get a bomb, and under this agreement we believe they will get a bomb, but that they can share military nuclear technologies with terrorists, and Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Other countries in the Middle East will get a bomb now. The entire region will become nuclearized. Really apples and oranges, and I don't see a quid pro quo, a signing off of one in favor of the other.
Well, one of my favorite questions is from Bob Kravitz of New Jersey. Based on your familiarity with the inner circle of the Obama administration, do you have any theory as to who told Jeffrey Goldberg that Bibi was chicken, whatever?
I do not. First of all, I'm very appreciative that everyone's from New Jersey. Thank you, fellow New Jerseyans, for joining us. My joke when I was ambassador was that I spend more time defending the state of New Jersey than you defending the state of Israel. So
I am born and bred in New Jersey.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. We have a traffic issue. Why don't you go around the block one time? Back to you. This is one of the most centralized administrations in post-war history. There's a very close circle of advisors around the president. And the simple answer to your question is no, I do not know who uttered that line. I do know that I spent about 12 hours on Israeli television the next day trying to explain to Israeli audiences the meaning of that word, because there actually is no word in Hebrew for chicken shit.
And it probably doesn't translate too well.
They don't get it. Chicken, this doesn't go together.
Right, it just doesn't. Actually, I should tell you, I'm sitting here with an Israeli who is, he's laughing.
It's true. It really is. It doesn't quite work. And you can say it means, pachdan, coward, but that doesn't quite do it either.
No.
It is much crasser. It's a much crasser word. And I was not running in the Prime Minister's party, but it's, as a veteran of the IDF and knowing that the Prime Minister, where he had served and how he had served, the fact that people who had never worn a uniform were saying this about Benjamin Netanyahu, I found deeply offensive.
Well, what was the buzz in the Israeli government and, to the extent that you know, in the American government after that word was used, what we all on this phone call probably believe, highly inappropriately against Bibi or against any politician in the entire world?
I think that I write in the book. I mean, that passage is in the book. And what I write in the book is that remark was dangerous to the United States of America. Why? Because countries in the world, not all of them so friendly to the United States, are looking at the way America treats its friends and the way America treats its democratically elected friends. And a country that disrespects its democratically elected friends is a country that's vulnerable to its enemies. And I profoundly believe that. And that was a dangerous remark. It sounded crass, but it wasn't just crass. It also had strategic ramifications.
Some people claim that the Obama administration is no more friendly or no less friendly than any prior administration since 1947. What's your view about that?
Well, it depends how you define friendly. The U.S.-Israel alliance has not been static. It has evolved over the years. People tend to forget that we fought the Six-Day War in 1967 with French weaponry, not with American weapons. We didn't have a single American bullet. And the strategic relationship only arose after that. And it's not really till the middle of the Reagan era, in the mid-'80s, that the alliance, as we've come to know it through 2 terms of Clinton, 2 terms of Bush, has emerged. And that's the alliance which I argue is founded on the twin principles of no surprises and no daylight. That's what I wrote about in the Wall Street Journal. No surprises meaning that if the United States is going to make a major policy statement on issues that pertain to Israel's security, that we will have an opportunity to review those positions before they're aired. No daylight holds that if we're going to have differences, and we will have differences, that we should do our utmost to make sure that those differences take place behind closed doors and not in front of them. And the Obama administration, as a matter of policy, as decision-making, determined to abandon those 2 principles. I watched it happen. The president gave his Cairo speech in June 2009, which touches on Israel's security in multiple ways, certainly on the Iranian nuclear issue, and we never had a chance to review it. It was a complete surprise to Israelis. And that was one of many such surprises. As for daylight, the president actually said, I'm putting daylight between Israel and the United States on diplomatic issues. So there was no debate about this. I remember earlier I said no one's taking me on the substance of the book. And this all of it is documented in the book. And I'm going to tell you in the book what it looked like from the inside. So there was a qualitative change under the Obama administration. Keep in mind that security relationship under the Obama era were closer probably than ever before. $4 billion a year in aid, close intelligence cooperation, weapons development. All of that is excellent. Ask anybody in the security establishment, including the Prime Minister. Ask the Prime Minister, he'll tell you the same thing. But the Obama administration made a distinction between no daylight on security issues and daylight on diplomatic issues. And that, to my mind, and not only my mind, was an artificial distinction because in the Middle East, no one distinguishes between diplomatic and military daylight. Daylight is just daylight, and it's searing.
From the inside, where you sat, what did you think Arab neighbors thought about the current administration, and what do you think inside the executive branch and inside the State Department? What do Americans in those branches, what do they think about the Arab view of America?
Well, I had the Israel's ambassador in Washington has the rather unique opportunity to meet with Arab representatives, not most of them not publicly, of course, and to hear their perspectives. And I was quite surprised. I write about it in the book. I was surprised to hear some of their reactions. For example, when the Obama administration made a very open and strenuous, I would say, demand for total freeze, both in the West Bank and in Jerusalem for construction, and I think there were people in Washington who thought that this would curry favor with the Arabs. In fact, it had exactly the opposite impact. Many Arabs looked at this and said, if this is the way the United States treats its friends, then we can't really trust the United States. So it's sort of counterintuitive. The greatest trauma for Israel's Arab neighbors was the way that the president expedited, I should say, the downfall of Mubarak. This is a man who had been America's friend for 30 years. He was a regular visitor at the White House. And several days after a million or so Egyptians protested in Tahrir Square, that's about 1/88 of the population, the president demanded that Mubarak step down. And this, not that everyone in the Middle East liked Mubarak. He was a rather brutal dictator, but they didn't like the way America treated its friends. And that is a recurrent theme throughout the book, that not only for the Arabs, but for much of the world, the U.S.-Israel relationship is a litmus of American power. Everybody is watching this relationship, whether you're a jihadist or a Japanese. And you're watching. And that is one of the many reasons why I say in the book that the U.S.-Israel alliance is beneficial to the entire world.
From what we've read, or the excerpts that we read in the press about your book, you had some discussion about American Jewish journalists, about American Jewish organizations, about the American Jewish public, although we are certainly much more, well, I shouldn't say much more fractured than in Israel, but we are exceedingly fractured here. We certainly have more religious denominations, perhaps, than in Israel. How does all that affect the Israel-American relationship, and how does that impact on the existential threat to Israel?
I just want to caution you firstly about some of the things you've read in the press, particularly in Haaretz, but not only in Haaretz. There have been journalists who have purported to take parts of the book out, and they are, how should I say, profound misrepresentations of what's in the book. Profound. Please read the book. Do not rely on these articles. Those articles are part of the delegitimization process, and please. One of the most impassioned passages in the book that I spent weeks on was Israel's relationship with American Jewry, and it came from a very deep and loving place, but also a place of great frustrations. I had to deal with religious and very religious and totally irreligious and left-wing, right-wing Jews, Zionists, less than Zionists, different organizations, the Women of the Wall controversy, conversion issues. That in itself was more than a full-time job for the ambassador, and I took that job very, very seriously because I believe that we are one people. I believe that Israel is the nation-state of the Jewish people and must be so, must live up to that reputation. But I also believe that American Jews should feel gratitude to be alive at this time in history when we do have a sovereign and strong Jewish state. And it's a long discussion. I think that Israel should do its utmost to preserve its connections with American Jewry in spite of the difficulties that involve with that. And remember that we are a very tiny country. We don't have a hinterland. American Jewry is our hinterland. And it not only has great spiritual and historical significance, it has great strategic significance as well.
You know, I know we have only a few minutes left, but I'd like to touch upon, if we can, BDS, where Israel as as the government, what the government policy is now towards BDS, what American Jews should be doing, and what, if any, American Jews should be, how we should be dealing with BDS on an international level.
Well, I've been involved deeply in the campaign against BDS, specifically since coming back from Washington in 2013. I was involved in efforts that have contributed to that recent summit in Las Vegas, and in speaking and trying to create awareness about BDS in Israel. One of the primary difficulties we face is that Israelis don't understand it, don't even understand what the letters stand for. And we've made significant progress. We've had help from the BDS people. They've come at Israel in two of our most sensitive issues, on soccer and on cell phones. And that has raised awareness very, very quickly. And the Prime Minister has now allocated 100 million shekels to the task. He's supposed to create a task force of 10 men or women to deal with BDS, but it's only the beginning. Right now, even now, we spend less money on the fight against BDS than we spend on, say, a platoon of tanks or an F-15 jet. And yet, BDS tries to create a situation where the tanks can't move and the planes can't take off because we don't have the right to defend ourselves. So we have to invest much more. We have to invest much more in understanding BDS and training the personnel to fight it, because we don't have that right now. Right now we have 40, 50 organizations that are working against BDS. They do wonderful work, but I don't believe that Israel can outsource this fundamental part of its security to NGOs and voluntary organizations. We can work with them and deeply appreciate their work, but I don't think we can shirk our responsibility here.
Michael Oren, this is Adam once again, and I before we sign off, because I know you have a sound check to get to for your big event, I'm going to ask you for the final word, what message you want to leave us with, other than, of course, to click on the link and to go to our local Barnes and Nobles and other places like that.
And find the book, right? Definitely.
Right. But I'll leave you with the last thought.
Major thought is we are going through a difficult period, and I don't know. We probably say this at any point in Israel's history, but right now, as this possible agreement approaches, I'm not even sure the Iranians are going to sign. I think they could maybe squeeze a few more concessions out, but let's see. Now is the time to mobilize. Do not be silent. This is a national Israeli issue. It's not just the Likud. It's not just Kulanu. It is almost across the Israeli political spectrum. We see this as a very bad and dangerous deal. And it is not only our right, it is our duty as Jews to stand up and say, that never again, this is not going to happen again. And the Jewish people will not be endangered in this way. So that's my call. That's my call to action. Please take it.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you. I want to thank Sarah for joining us. And I want to thank everyone who's come on this call. Once again, I urge you to purchase the book, read the book, and of course also to make your contribution to American Friends of Likud so we can continue to provide you with these types of opportunities to speak and interact directly with Israel's leaders. Thank you all very much, and have a good night.
Good night. Adam? 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 Adam?